Hi everyone. Today's my guest is Kwabena Okrah. He's very passionate about operations, risk, and value chain automation. He's currently leading an effort to build a supply chain intelligence platform that uses data from news events such as sentiments, locations, and keywords to glean real-time insights that can help organizations understand external constraints that could affect their supply chain and day-to-day operations. So do you want to add anything to that?
I'm excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, thanks for coming. I'm really excited to learn about your journey. So do you want to kind of tell the audience how did you become an entrepreneur? What was your professional career? How did it look like? Stuff like that.
Oh, I guess I've always been entrepreneurial in nature, and all along throughout my career, I've always tried to find new ways to solve old problems or a refined way to better communicate existing solutions in a way that makes it much more interesting and more exciting for other people to get enlisted, own it, and then expand it. Most of my career has been around engineering operations. So think about construction, electric utilities, primarily infrastructure to include telecommunications and internet infrastructure to ensure you have reliable service. I saw a gap, or I still see a gap around operations, primarily around supply chain optimization, where a lack of understanding of macro events. When I say macro events, I mean things that are happening within society that could affect supply or delivery of services or products. If an organization is blindsided by this, then they will be surprised. I mean, imagine when COVID-19 started, if all organizations that had a global footprint had a heat map that told them that there were several cases of people calling out from work happening in a place called Wuhan, China. That could have been an early indication of an alarm or some type of alarm that would help leaders kick on some type of disaster recovery or some type of business continuity effort. We didn't have to wait for it to become a news item on CNN or Fox or Al Jazeera. Organizations could have had some leading indication of noise or potential issues that were coming out of this noise in the news. And so what we've done is we've used artificial intelligence, machine learning, named entity recognition, things like that, to sift through publicly available information such as news, to glean sentiments, the location, and the subject matter of the news to kind of pick out risks or potential opportunity for challenges that organizations can use to enhance their intelligence on their supply chain.
Awesome. And that's the product you guys are building in Alertify. That's the name of your company.
Yes, it is. Now, the most important thing along my entrepreneurial journey is something called customer discovery. So customer discovery is basically you have a thesis or you have a hypothesis on what you think you're trying to solve. And so for me, when I used to be in the electric utility industry, when I used to be in the construction industry, when I used to be in the service provision industry, I began to realize that I had employees across the globe, or at least North America. And if there was an employee that wasn't showing up to work on Monday, I'll make a phone call to find out what's happening. But it could be that there's probably like a snowstorm, a hurricane, or just something happening catastrophic around them that has prevented them from showing up. So it became clear to me that myself, my clients, my boss, my employees needed some type of a crystal ball to understand what's happening around them or their client or our clients to be able to make some type of empathetic decision based on what could be affecting a lack of productivity and not just jump to conclusion that there's a problem. So with that said, when the pandemic started, it was a huge opportunity for me to kind of step out from corporate America and build something interesting. And we set off to build Alertify, and it's evolved over time. So when I talk about customer discovery, spending time with potential users or potential customers or potential buyers, people that would pay to use this product, and asking them if they have this problem at all. And if they have this problem, what solutions are they using? They probably may not be using any solution, right? What we're competing against however they solve this problem today. So our job is to build something better, faster, more efficient, and cheaper, and more reliable. If the economics make sense, and then roll that out to organizations. And this could someday be some type of an API or an integration tool that could hit on SAP, Kinexys, Oracle, IBM, and all enterprise-wide supply chain modules to kind of give planners, schedulers, demand optimization folks some type of insight to external factors that should be taken into consideration when it comes to logistics and supply chain.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want you to tell a little bit more about the product if you can share that information. So as far as I can imagine, it's like an API or some kind of a dashboard visualization where you can see the current like global events and how they might affect the supply chain.
Yeah, so that's a good way to describe it. An API that can connect to your platform ad hoc via cloud. Um, it's just using longitude and latitude based on where your RFID signals are coming from, right, from your supply chain footprint. So think about like shipping companies that ship or export import across the globe, and they're probably importing vaccines, right? If there's some type of political strife or war in a region that could affect this shipment, um, our signals or our intelligence could be an early indication, um, or could be some part of the root cause analysis on why there's a delay on a route for a shipment. So as you described it, it could be in the form of an API that sits on top of an enterprise planning module for supply and operations, such as SAP, Kinexys, Oracle, IBM, and others. And it gives you a visual view using heat maps on keywords, whether it's positive or negative, and the reoccurrence of those keywords to show if that issue is reoccurring or it's a one-time issue. And it's a very user-friendly interface. And it has a communication platform that also allows you to somewhat engage with other people in your ecosystem that may need to know this type of information that could be a risk or opportunity to optimize the supply route.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm not sure if you want to share this story, but if you do, I
Yeah.
think it's going to be really interesting. I know that you weren't born in the U.S. You're an
Oh,
immigrant,
yeah.
and yeah, and does that story kind of connect to what you're building? Because probably some remote places may not have the available information you can find unless you use a product like yours.
This is true. So I grew up in Ghana, West Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, and moved here for college. Was privileged to have great opportunities in the workforce, build different skill sets, gained lots of understanding of problems. And for me, my family is spread across the world. I have cousins in Texas. I have cousins in Massachusetts. I have some in Ohio. I have some in Europe, Netherlands, Germany, United Kingdom, and I think Italy. Yeah, that I can think of. And I have siblings or brothers and sisters, in the UK, in San Francisco, right, and more recently New York City. But the issue is, it's kind of easy for me to kind of make a phone call to them every Sunday and see how they're all doing. But that gets a little tedious at some point and boring. If I knew that there was an issue in San Francisco, let's say, for example, there's a fire in San Francisco, and I get a warning through my platform, then I can call my brother in San Francisco and see if he's okay, he's affected by the the fire. If there's like for example, when the Queen of England passed away, I think um, I reached out to my sister to see how things were happening and how things were going and how everybody felt and that kind of thing. So just to have a pulse from a family social network perspective on what's happening around my family members, be it good or bad, that could trigger me to call them and check on them. I mean, they might say that I'm very, very thoughtful, but it's not I'm being thoughtful. I have a software that allows me to see what's happening. When I call them, I seem aware of what's happening around them, which means that I'm thoughtful, I guess empathetic. So it's the same product, but a different use case. But overall, just my need to understand what's happening within 5, 10, 50, 30 miles of my loved ones is a huge part of this product and why it came into fruition.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And also, as far as I understand, this product can kind of translate different languages into, let's say, English, and even capture different signals, not just text or I don't know, video or TV.
Yeah. I mean, so think about artificial intelligence at a simplest form. So you look at voice to text and text analytics. So the text analytics piece is easy, exists. We're doing that now. The voice to text is happening as well. But most people across the globe have different dialects or different languages. So where I'm from, I don't know, there are multiple languages, right? There are different languages in Europe. Um, there are different languages across the rest of the world. And imagine that, you know, we could listen to the news in different languages and different dialects, transpose that into a common language like English, and then do some text analytics on that. It could be French, it could be Spanish, it could be Portuguese, it could be German, it could be any other language. But overall, if the user is looking at the product in English or French or German or Portuguese or Swahili or some other language, then they want to be able to understand the news in that language. But more importantly, they want to be able to understand news in other places that is not in their local language that is affecting people they care about. So this artificial intelligence will kind of be this linguist or translator, if you will, that would seamlessly translate all this intelligence into communication that anyone can understand in your local dialect.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, since you guys are around 3 years into the company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How much did you manage to achieve during those 3 years? Maybe in terms of product, in terms of like business customers. What stage are you at the moment?
So we're at the stage where we have a minimum viable product or prototype, and we're testing out some use cases. Initially, when we started, we spent a lot of time doing customer discovery, speaking with potential users or potential end users. Some people didn't even realize they had this problem. Some people knew they had this problem, but they had solutions existing they were using. And we asked them what challenges they have with the existing solutions, right? And if they had a wish list, what could be done to improve those solutions? And we did exactly that. But we evolved over time based on continuous customer discovery to better understand the true value that we need to create for our end user. So we raised a little bit of money, I think about $250,000. We built this prototype, but we designed the full user journey of the product for the desktop, as well as the apps. You think about iOS, Android. We didn't do anything for Microsoft, but we could do that easily. And the idea is to not necessarily build out the full product, but to build out the most interesting or the highest demand from our end users and potential end users as the critical path, as the core of the product. And based on the user experience, feedback, and interest of other features, we would kind of roll out and modify existing or planned out rollouts to improve the user experience. So I would say that in a year or so from now, we would refine our MVP into a true product and launch it officially. And then beyond that point, we will just see if the market absorbs the product. And if not, we shut down. If so, then we expand and then we scale up across the globe.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. And you also mentioned that there are many use cases for the product. I'm wondering, is your main customer, or at least in your mind, a enterprise, like a business company, or is it like an individual families who want to really understand what is going on for the family members or
Yeah, I mean,
stuff like that?
from an altruistic perspective, I know what's nice and what I think is needed. It would be to build something for the family and for family members to use, and for parents to understand what's happening around their children, children to understand what's happening back at home, military, families, or diplomats to know what's happening around the world, around their loved ones, and for their family to know what's happening around the diplomats or the military people while they travel across the globe. But that is not very easy to do because you need a huge marketing engine and you need a lot of funding to kind of build such a social product. But on the other side, from an enterprise perspective, there are multiple organizations that are trying to glean insights on what's happening globally, right? That could affect their operations from a governance, risk, and compliance perspective on the cybersecurity front, and also from a logistics operations perspective, from a supply chain or value chain creation perspective. And that's where the rubber meets the road, solving a problem for people that have a need to pay for that service. And then perhaps when some revenue is generated on that enterprise B2B front, then we could always do something altruistic from a social impact perspective on the family and friends and military communication piece. But for now, I think the key is to be sustainable or profitable, and I think the focus should be on the B2B use case for now.
Yeah, yeah, that makes
But that could
total.
change. I mean that could change. But
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense to
yeah,
me. Um, as a founder myself, I do understand that until you really found that product market fit and like a business model that generates revenue, it's very hard to say this strategy is going to work. Of course, it might change, but I think you guys are um, onto something because I do see the problem for sure, and I do think that it might be very useful for both um, B2B and B2C segments. So that's awesome. Um,
no, thank you.
yeah, I'm wondering. Again, maybe you don't want to share that. Maybe
Yeah.
that's an NDA. But I'm wondering, how do you guys do your customer acquisition? How do you find the either either potential clients or just people to talk with? How does that process work?
So a lot of the clients' relationships are from my career. So when I used to be in electric utilities, I used to be in construction. I used to work for uh, a hospitality and facilities management organization. I used to also work for a consulting firm that does asset management or logistics management, right? And so those are trusted relationships that I have, and it's a conversation. It's a matter of interest from their part, just kind of see what I'm working on succeed. And so that's where we're starting. We're starting off with true relationships that understand my purpose and our purpose and what we're trying to do, to give us somewhat of a soft landing and a space to experiment. Beyond that, I haven't thought about what the marketing path looks like. I'm sure there are many consultants and people out there that can help, to take it beyond that path. But for the first couple of steps, I have enough relationships in my Rolodex that I can build a sandbox and test this thing out within. So it's been good so far.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome that you can utilize your uh, relationships that you
Yeah.
had in your career. It's really awesome. Um, I'm also wondering about your team, the other founders, the executives, and also if you can share that. Um, the Did you guys fundraise, or is that all bootstrapped? How did that go?
It's a very flat organization, a very small team. Um, so, at least from my perspective, at an early stage when you're evolving the product, you don't need that many, you know, people or experts. Right? You just need people that are curious and interested to do something wonderful, right? And you want to leverage expertise from other people in the ecosystem that have the expertise, right? So there are incubators, there are accelerators, there are coaches, there are advisors. There are even software developers that don't just develop the software, but they also give you advice on what's the best path to build a product the right way. And so our approach has been to leverage the overall ecosystem, universities that have a desire to work with industry to kind of innovate, graduate students that want to do some real world experiential learning so they can work on some products or some services for us for in exchange for experience in the real world that can help them gain a job in the future. So that's the approach we've taken. So it's a lean, mean, small team, but it's a broader team, and the broader team is through a matrix relationship with external vendors and suppliers that provide specific value for each problem we're trying to solve. And the value in that is that we make less mistakes because the consultants or experts solve a problem that they're good at. And by the time they're doing that project, we learn from them, and then we can use the high level knowledge to kind of steer the product development moving forward.
Yeah, cool. And what about raising funds? Did you guys attract an investment
So,
or?
so initially when we started, I basically funded the initial effort. So when I left my last job, I had quite a little bit of money. So I took some of that, injected it into the organization, and then we were able to build um, a straw man or a skeleton version of the product, and we were able to present that to some investors who invest. I think they initially invested 50,000 and 25, and I think 100,000 beyond that, and we've gotten some other funds from other places, but we've raised overall close to I think $250,000. We also got some grants that gave us an office space, with an office space within an incubator, right? So we got daily support from the incubator in terms of just general advice, and also had access to other founders that we could share our challenges with. That could, even though they're building different things, entrepreneurs huddled up with other entrepreneurs, and it's a very uh, supportive, emotional, supportive environment. So that is where we started off, is some bootstrapping and then some institutional investment. And actually, a venture capital firm reached out a couple of weeks ago in terms of helping with some marketing and scaling up. But like I was trying to tell you, um, the goal is not to scale too fast. It's just to spend more time to understand the value proposition, because there are many organizations that have solved this problem or are solving this problem. We have to understand where the gaps exist, and then maybe close that gap, and then we can create value and potentially partner with some of those companies or sell to them or just branch out and build something different. So it's an ongoing process, but funding at this point is not a challenge. The challenge for now is patience and understanding what the market truly wants.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's great that you take that and go with this approach of
Mm.
really having this lean mindset and really understanding your customers. How can you bring the most value to them? That's
Mm.
awesome. I'm wondering, in those 3 years, what are the top lessons you've learned in your own company? I guess there are a lot of them, but maybe like the top three or something that you can share.
I mean, I'll try to describe the first one. I'm not sure if it's easy for me to describe it, but when when you think about doing things, you just do things from a place of passion. And when you do things from a place of passion, you're blinded by what's real versus what you think is real, because you're just solving a problem out of your heart or your gut. And that could be a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because if you're passionate about the right thing and doing it the wrong way, you can spin a lot of your wheels and lose a lot of resources. And by the time you actually figure out how to get it done, you're out of resources. So I think the first lesson is to, before you build anything, is to spend some time interviewing people through a process called customer discovery. Now, I'm not saying put together a survey and ask people if they want your product and what features they want. I'm just saying talk to people. Like this conversation, ask, hey, do you have friends across the globe? Say, yeah, how do you keep in touch with them? Or, I just call them, or, I go on Facebook to see what their most recent post is, and I call them and congratulate them or talk to them about it. And then I'll say, okay, what if I could save you some time by building an algorithm that could do all this for you and send you a text every morning on who to call based on what's happening? Would you like that? So, that's really cool. Would you pay for that? No. Then he tells me that it's a cool thing, but you're not going to pay for it, right? So the biggest lesson for me is just that. It's just the customer discovery piece. And then the second lesson is, at least for me, I'm an engineer by training, okay? And engineers just want to solve a problem, regardless of how expensive the problem may be to solve. And from a business perspective, what you have to do is to understand the value being created. And the value being created is bigger than the cost of the problem before you solve the problem, right? So that's a huge challenge for an engineer like myself and maybe others. I don't know if other engineers have the same issue, but to understand solving a business problem versus building a cool engineering product, right? So that's the second lesson, is to understand solving business problems that people are willing to pay for, that you can build in an incremental way to solve the problem and create value and create a self-sustained marketing scalability program over time. And the last one is, pragmatic strategy. So a lot of people, or at least I think about strategy, or I used to think about strategy as, you sit behind a whiteboard and you map out, okay, we have limited resources, we have this market, we're going to do it this way, do it that way, and do it this way. I mean, that's kind of like, it's very academic, right? You asked me, how are we going to market? Is there an NDA and all those things? Because you're trying to figure out what's our secret sauce, right? And I told you through relationships that I have, right? So instead of going on a whiteboard and lacing up all these plans and doing all this analysis and which are great things to do, by the way, I have learned to spend time on pragmatic things. So if I know someone that has a logistics organization that is using, for example, SAP, that needs someone to help them optimize their labor or their supply and demand curves, and I could propose to them that in addition to doing that work for them as a consultant, I can give them an additional view into external factors that could affect their supply and demand or their load of FTEs or their employee labor. They could be interested in trying this, right? So in hindsight, if this is successful and it becomes a product that is integrated into SAP, you might think that I sat down and did the whole PowerPoint to present to SAP and all these wonderful things and try to get them to buy into it. But in reality, it was just a conversation through a potential opportunity with a client to solve a supply chain issue. And this was an add-on, right? So the last lesson is just not to go out to build a strategy, but to actually listen to the voice of potential customers, solve a problem for them. And when that problem is solved, you then use up use case to build out a PowerPoint and a strategy that you can then expand. So those are the 3 lessons.
Awesome. I totally agree with all of them. That's really valuable stuff. All right. So before we finish, maybe any last thing that you want to share or tell an audience, or maybe like a young entrepreneur or someone like that, based on your experience, or just anything you want to close on.
I guess my only recommendation is all entrepreneurs need to spend some time in a workforce in some capacity, right? And the reason why I say that is because you may be solving a problem that is out of touch or obsolete, right? Because there's so many solutions that exist in the marketplace that you may not be aware of. But being in the workforce allows you to see problems that your organization may have, that sister organizations or competitors may have as well, that you may be able to solve. You might be able to explain to your boss, you could solve this problem. Your boss might tell you, hey, that isn't your job, or our organization is solving problem ABC, and this is XYZ. but XYZ is not our main objective, which is true, right? A company can't solve all the problems. They can focus on their core objective, and their suppliers or other vendors can solve the problem, and then they can buy the service. So I think if you spend some time in the corporate world, you might come across opportunities where you can solve a problem and then sell it to a corporation at some point. That's kind of what I would like to say is to not lose touch of what's happening in the real world, and to take advantage of the real world by somehow being in the capacity of either a consultant or an employee, for you to understand the challenges of your end users. If you're doing a B2B product, right? It may not
Yeah.
be applicable to all solutions, but from a B2B enterprise solution, you need to spend some time. And you also build relationships for piloting, right? So it's a win-win.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that's it. I really grateful for your insights and
Yeah.
advice. That was awesome. So thank you again for your time and for your learnings that you shared with us.
And thanks for the opportunity to listen to me and allow me to share my experiences too. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.